Really
Well,
cool.
it is another one of those wired in beliefs that gets perpetuated, right? When I got pregnant, and found out my daughter was going to be born in August, the predominant thing was like, "Oh my god, you're going to be it's so hot.
Yeah,
It's just
yeah,
that's going to be terrible." Right? Like and everybody loves to like kind of throw at you all the terrible things about being pregnant. And there are uncomfortable things. I was lucky I didn't have a, a real challenging pregnancy. So I'm not saying there aren't huge challenges. We just want to at least soften the edges of turning it into this event we're just supposed to get through and get over it and not see and be present with it and see what, we can learn about it. See it as a part of our journey and the adventure of something that's, you know, miraculous.
Welcome, everyone, to the Spiritual Forum. I'm so glad you're here. Very excited about my guest today, which I always am. Can't wait to introduce you to her. But first, just a reminder to check out everything that's going on my website, thespiritualforum.org. You will find information about my retreat, all my podcasts, and sign up for my newsletter. I send it out every week, and it highlights the most recent podcasts. It highlights segments from prior podcasts. There's my reflections on the newly published podcast. I think it's always kind of interesting to see what I thought of it. And also a thought for the day to send you on your week. So you can subscribe at thespiritualform.org. Let me introduce you to my guest. Dr. Gertrude Lyons stands at the forefront of coaching and education in holistic women's development, parenting, self love, and relationship fulfillment. As the visionary behind Rewrite the Mother Code, LLC, she inspires women to embark on their unique paths of personal transformation. Her doctoral research and diverse certifications and training enable her to offer a tailored, integrative approach that caters to the specific needs of individuals, couples, or families. Her book, Rewrite the Mother Code From Sacrifice to Stardust, A Cosmic Approach to Motherhood, Dr. Gertrude challenges traditional beliefs and empowers us to embrace motherhood as a universal force of creation. Welcome, Gertrude.
Oh, Carol, thank you so much. It's such a pleasure to be on the show today.
Yeah, I'm really excited to dig into this. I do think that rewriting the mother code and using words like stardust and cosmic and that
Ah,
same phrase is a great
And
thing.
in the title of my book, yeah, I have a whole story with that. But yeah, maybe we'll get there.
We'll talk about it. Okay. Before we get into your story, let's do some rapid fire questions. They're easy. If you just had a couple sentences to tell the world what your message is, what would you say?
So I'd say my overriding message is, well, there's so many. I always have a hard time like say this. Oh my God, there's 10
I
messages,
know,
Carol.
I
But
know.
okay. What I say specifically around the book and rewriting the mother code is uh, uh, that it's possible to have the mothering experience that is within you, that you imagine, that you dream, and that motherhood can be more than sacrifice. It can be self realization.
Oh, that's very empowering. Love to hear more about that. All right, this is also very easy, easier, I think. No, maybe not. What is a favorite place for you?
Oh,
It could be
yes. Not so easy,
geography.
but yes, I know. No, it's such a good one. But I'll say I discovered in COVID, first I'll answer that generally. Nature is my happy place. And we've had the just huge privilege and blessing to now have a place in Mexico. And there's a number of factors that I could say about why not just like, oh, it's warm and sunny. I mean, that does help. But we've built a home there and a retreat center, and it, it's definitely my happy place.
Where are you in Mexico?
Oh, I was going to say that. Zihuatanejo, which is we're outside of Zihuatanejo, which is near Ixtapa on the Pacific. Um, and just to orient, because I get very confused with Mexico geography, It's on the Pacific, sort of between, although a little farther south, between Puerto Vallarta and Acapulco, so to speak.
Okay, okay. All right. You know, I can't figure Mexico out because so many people are moving there and making a home there, and then I have so many people who would never travel there because
Right?
they're afraid of dangerous things happening, so I can't figure it out.
I know, and I think, a huge part of it, Carol, is propaganda. It's for some reason we've been, fed a way
It's
blown up
everywhere.
version, right? But I live in the city of Chicago, and I feel as safe there as I do here because, you know, I live, within the city. You kind of know where to go when. And, if you're smart about not traveling into unknown areas or areas that you've been told, like, that's probably not the best place for you to go, you're more than fine. Right.
Interesting.
It's, yeah, it's not what, I don't know, and it doesn't mean things don't go on there, but just like here, I mean,
Yeah,
where
yeah,
where
yeah,
I live,
right.
I mean, our garage has been broken into, our car's been broken into twice. We've had literally a murder a block away. So,
Yeah.
it's kind of hard to say like, oh, I feel so much safer here than Mexico. It's
Okay,
so
but that
that's
that
my
helps.
long answer to that. But you
That
really,
helps.
yeah.
Yeah.
uh,
This may be similar, but,
mhm.
what brings you joy? You gotta pick one. I know there's tons.
Okay. Um, well, right now, I would say what has been bringing me joy is, uh, and maybe this is too general, so you don't have to tell me if you need a different
No,
kind of
it's not.
answer. But leading my retreats brings me so much joy, and you know, I'm sneaking in like traveling in with a book because that's around with a book because that's brand new since it just launched as of the time we're recording this. Um, but I think that connection, the connection, you know, th- that you build, and so maybe that's more the like bringing me joy is connecting and sharing and being present with other people.
Well, I completely get that. I lead an annual retreat,
Yeah, I
and
wanted to hear about that. Actually, I
yeah,
saw it,
I
but I didn't
I
take
love
time
it.
to like look at it yet. So I'm like, eh,
It's all right, but it is, it's like something I've given birth to, and I
yes,
nurture and I care for,
yeah,
and it is one of my joys as well. I completely
mm,
get it. Creating community, it's
right.
a real privilege, and
Yeah,
a
so
great
then I
joy.
guess we could creation, right? Like
Yeah,
creation
right.
is brings me
That's the
joy.
general
Mhm.
joy.
A
Yeah.
good general joy.
Yeah, what's interesting about that is when I find people are stuck, I I I think the answer is often create something. Just create
Mm,
something.
yes.
You're stuck in life, so start journaling or writing or doing a garden. Do something. Start getting out of yourself and creating something. I do think that pulls us out of the muck of,
Mm.
the material world and into a more expansive, creative,
Ugh,
cosmic experience. So,
here, here. I totally
all right.
agree.
All right, we're on the same page.
Yay. I don't think we're gonna have trouble with that, Carol.
No, I don't e I don't either. I usually let my guests talk whether I agree with them or not, so
And I'm
but
sorry,
anyway.
would you prefer to be called Reverend Carol? We didn't talk
No,
about
no,
that ahead of
Carol's
time.
fine.
Carol's okay.
I called
Okay.
you Gertrude, so I
Yeah,
figure I set the
yes,
stage there.
absolutely.
Okay, so let's talk about you briefly before we get into the mother code. I got
Sure.
lots of questions about the mother code,
Great.
but what brought you to
Mm.
create this thing called the mother code? And it sounds like it's also a company? The mother code's a company, is that
Yeah.
right? Yeah.
Yes. It's this work I did. So what brought me, I mean, there's a whole personal life journey that
We can
led
tell some of
me.
that, yeah.
Okay, a whole personal life journey that I'd say got kicked off. And when I say personal life journey, I think what kicked off and, then life took its many paths that led to rewrite the mother code is deciding at 24 years old when I got engaged to my husband that I would take the advice of my then boss to do premarital counseling. And so this is 1989, 1990. Coaching wasn't even a thing. So he was a therapist. Um, and just so out of left field, so not my norm, right? I didn't know anybody doing this. It seemed weird. And why would you do something like that at a happy time when I'm about to marry like the man of my dreams, right? And we're so in love. But it was, and I think it's that my first real experience of tuning into myself and listening to the voice that was saying different things like, yeah, okay, all that. Um, but hey, let's look at l- your parents' marriages. What was modeled for you? And, on both sides of the family, there was divorce and alcoholism, extramarital affairs. So that didn't look so, it's okay. If that was who we were with day in and day out, that's who was teaching me about relationship. So despite, some N not like I don't even know if I told how many people I told about it, but I just knew people would think it was weird. Um, so let alone my fiancé, who I wrote a letter to because, this was pre-texting, communicating any other way than face-to-face phone call or writing a letter. So I'm like, "Hey, my boss suggested this. I think it could be a really good idea." And he's like, "What? Like, you have skeletons in your closet? Like, what is happening?" But somehow miraculously, he went along with it. Kind of like, "All right, I'll do it for you. We'll see what this is." And it was. I'm so glad we were together for that first experience to have sit with somebody, just share, have him ask about your family atmosphere, and I know now I've studied it so much, I know exactly what he was doing. At the time, to have somebody just see you, right? To, like, listen and say, like, "Oh, it probably felt like this in your family. Oh, yeah, with the alcoholism, this probably, you've probably had, these kinds of experiences." And it was like magic to us, right? Like,
Yeah.
wow, this could be something really worthwhile. So it started us on our growth journey, right? And he agreed. We did premarital counseling with him. I jumped right in because guess what? Mother wound, mother issues were, as I'm planning a wedding, were like right there at the forefront. So it made, then again, total sense to me to really start on my own personal journey, which I give a lot of credit to the therapist at the time because he's like, "Yeah, once we got married, now the best thing you can do is work on yourself." And I know that's something that I've heard on some of your episodes that comes up is knowing yourself is, a way to get closer to God. And I was raised Catholic. Most of my schooling was Catholic, but I didn't feel like I had a spiritual connection.
Mhm.
So in doing that work, I realized like, oh, I'm have it sparked a yearning to have more of a personal relationship with spirit and discover my own spirituality or my own path, right? That it took me on. So that we had that background and way to then start looking at having a family and kind of proceeding, down that way. And there's a lot more there's so many stories and they're all in the book. I share a lot about my personal history and stories and how I came to be doing this, but I will say that it was a mix of holding the mothering experience as one of self-realization, self-actualization, transformation, personal, whatever, however you want it, spiritual development, all of that possibility of at times really digging in and doing that, and then at other times completely putting it aside. And I got to a point when my daughters were teenagers, one maybe had left for college, where I'm like, "Wow, I've really abandoned myself at various points in my mothering journey. Why did that happen?" Here, I was already a coach. I was coaching parents. I was coaching families. Had done by that time 2 master's degrees in psychology and transformational coaching. It's like, I couldn't be in a better atmosphere to keep going and keep learning and growing, but I didn't. So that really struck me besides having regret and remorse, but I'm like, I'm going to study this. That's when I decided to do my doctorate. And the doctorate was all about raising women's awareness in the transformational opportunity in mothering. I did a curriculum evaluation study and things that came out of that. I was like, wow, this is where I want to focus my work as a coach, as a speaker, eventually author, eventually podcast host, but I didn't know that at the time. Right. Like this is a message women are really resonating with and feeling like it's not talked about enough. Um, just the pressure women are under, or just what's in the culture and in our families that holds us back. And wow, there's other ways you can do this than what I've, seen or been around my whole life. So then that led, and then rewrite the mother code was a way to, I'm going to just use the word brand it, to hopefully get the point across that this is what this journey's about, is looking at the codes that we grew up with and we saw from our own, the way we were mothered, to the cultural wiring, um, and then to look that straight in the eyes so that we can then create an experience that resonates with us based on all of that. So,
Well, the this, but
mhm.
the phrase "rewrite the mother code" makes us go, "What's the mother code?"
Yes.
What are we having
What
to
are we
rewrite?
rewriting?
Yeah, what are we rewriting? Do we even have a mother code? There's
Yeah.
so many things that we live
Yeah.
by that are so invisible
Yeah.
to us, but that were just handed down. So much conditioning, so much cultural stuff that we're swimming in it like
Mhm.
water. We don't know that it's there. We're just so used to it being there.
Yes.
So we don't pause and question and go, oh, why am I thinking that? We just do what is programmed. We're running so many programs. So let's talk
Mm.
about the mother code. Like, what is
Sure.
it?
Yeah. No, well, it is everything you just said. Like you just, you know, put it out there and it's in its general sense, but specifically around um the cultural construct of mothering and motherhood, right? So what are beliefs, what are codes, so to speak, what is some of the wiring? And I name I name about 7 of them in the book that I feel like are ubiquitous in our culture, and some that we're aware, and you may or may not be aware. One that I think most women are aware of, or most people are aware of when I say it, but we still, it's really hard not to live by it, which is in the realm of, mothering children, it's self-sacrifice, that you need to know that when you do that, your child is going to come first. Then, if you have a spouse or partner, they come next. If you're also working, that comes next. And you may or may not even be on the list. And if you are, it's way down. But usually you're, feeling like, so, that's a code that we've grown up with most, this has started to change some, right? So we have started to chip away at this and at least acknowledge that it's not okay and we need to work on it. But we're talking generations, of women who haven't been valued, have felt like this is like what they're supposed to do. And so we don't have models yet for how it could be different. So that's a pretty deeply wired in code, right? That keeps, this is thousands of years, Carol, right? Like this is through all of
Yeah, yeah,
patriarchy,
yeah,
right?
yeah.
Like a
Yeah,
patriarchal
yeah, definitely,
culture.
definitely. But, there was also a time where parenting was a little more distributed.
Yes.
It's kind of new that it's just up to mom and dad. It's a
Mhm.
lot of work for mom and dad. So
Well,
I
that's
think we have a
another one
whole
of the
new code that
codes.
was written. Yeah.
Oh, it was. Exactly the industrial age, and the time when it moved from, you particularly in, you know, agricultural or, not maybe the highest echelon of classes at the time, but you had children also to be part of the family workforce, right? Like they
Mhm.
were there to serve the family and be part of. It's not just like that you had them to be slaves to the family, but everybody served in the family. And industrial age where, work then became away from the home, it shifted to now the child, we serve the child, right? Like now it's become a job. And Alison Gopnik, who I think you'd also really love, she's a child development psychiatrist at UCLA Berkeley or something, but I loved her book, The Carpenter and the Gardener. And I, and we can go into that, but particularly this point that parenting wasn't a word. Like it wasn't the job it is now until literally like the 1950s. It's just,
Uh-huh.
it was family, it was caregiving, it was, and like you said, and not that long ago, it was community, which we've just lost. So now the code is you do it alone and there's a right way to do it. And part of that right way to do motherhood is to do it alone. It's like another way you can be a really good mother is not need help. I mean, you might get it, but you don't need it. Right. So we're supposed
Yeah.
to act like we really don't need help. But that was so built into communities. And, if we go way back, more of a tribal, if we look tribal specifically, but plenty of communities post tribal that, it was everybody was in it together. Right.
Yeah.
And you weren't alone and you could watch a whole lot of different women and how they did it, not just your mother who you had been around. And you have like one model, right? And it's your mother or your main caregiver, we could also say. But yeah, so that's another really big one.
I was really fortunate in that my parents lived a mile from me. And um, when I had 3 children, and
Yeah.
we were a little community raising those girls,
Uh,
and it was really good for them and good
yeah.
for us.
Oh my gosh. I
It's
am
rare. Yeah.
so thankful for my grandparents who live with us 3 months of the year, you know, because with them, I got a model of a loving couple, which I didn't see in my parents. My parents it was transactional. I talk about that a lot in the book too, but it's, to see, oh, these two people like care about each other and really love each other. Oh, that's great. Um, and I credit them for not being totally crazy.
Well, I think it does help to have role models like that.
Mhm.
The whole therapy thing that you went through or the counseling, that's so
Yeah.
interesting. It's really interesting. How long have you been married?
Well, on June 23rd, Carol, we'll be married 35 years.
Yeah, okay. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. We're going on, 44.
Wow. Congratulations.
August 1st, 44.
Well, and
It's a
you're
lot.
someone when I hear that, I trust that like I don't know you that well, but I know you well enough and what you're doing to know because some people will brag about that like, well, we've been married 50 years. I'm like, but have you been married? Like, because as
Yeah,
you
yeah.
know, like relationships are work. I mean,
Yeah.
we've done couples coaching throughout our marriage, right? Like,
Yeah,
and
yeah.
it's work and it has ups and downs. There's a lot of skills to be learned.
Yeah, there is,
A
there is.
lot that
Yeah.
is
A
possible.
lot
So
different than that young woman who was saying, do we need to do couples
no,
counseling?"
right? It's all gonna work out. It's, oh, sure,
I
just
love him.
because I love him and he's handsome and, you know, really smart and wealthy and like all that's what matters, right? We'll figure the rest out. Like, oh my gosh.
Check, check,
So nice.
check.
Yeah,
Okay.
exactly. No, that I can promise you that without work and working on ourselves, our marriage would not have lasted.
Yeah,
It was
it is a accomplishment.
the
It
wiring
is.
was too strong for it to go in a few different directions that I mean, maybe we could have gotten help further down, but usually if you don't do it right away, usually wait a long time and it's harder.
Yeah, I think that's really good advice
Yeah.
early on. That's a really, really good advice, yeah. So, we have these codes that
Mm.
are imprinted on us or the, like, programs that we're running that we've inherited from our parents, our grandparents,
Mm.
and generations, and the culture.
Yeah.
And I think that mothering is always changing. I think about well, I had,
Mm.
uh, 2 my children were kind of spaced out. So, like, I had an
Okay.
8-year-old and a 6-year-old when I had another baby.
Oh, okay.
And parenting was different for the first 2, what
I
was
bet.
in
Yes.
parenting than with the baby. And they're always like, put them on their front, put them on their back, put them in sleep with them, don't sleep with them, let them have what they want, put them in timeout, don't put them in timeout, listen to their feelings, don't listen to their feelings, it's like, whoa. But I think what you get at in your work is to bring it back to us, to the intuition that is really imprinted in
Yeah.
us. Like we know. And there's so much out there that we give up. We give up what is inside us and what's natural. Not to say that we don't need help and all of that, but
Yeah.
we give up that natural thought about, well, I should do this or I shouldn't do that, or I feel this based on what the experts are saying, or the
Mhm.
doctors are saying, or the medical world is saying, or the psychological world is
Yeah.
saying. Yeah, I've
No.
seen that happen. Yeah.
Well, I just you just hit it all spot on, again, Carol, like, that is it's but you've having had that experience, you got to see from personal experience that motherhood is a cultural construct, right?
Yes.
And I remember, and it's something I would do in some of my workshops is I'd hand out articles or I'd have them go on Google and do like, oh, research motherhood in past, times in history, like what was happening, and there were things, at the turn of this 1800s into the 20th century. It's the Victorian era, all that, like, we were things were pretty tight and constricted, but there were things like literally like put in print saying, if you're pregnant, don't look at ugly people. Don't look at ugly people. Like, what for 2 reasons. One, they really thought that, like, if you looked at, like,
Does it make your
malformed
baby
or
ugly?
yeah, and it could upset you, and, like, you were not, this was, that training that they were getting, like, "Oh, women are so frail and that we gotta protect them, and this is the kind of protection, we're gonna give them." Like, "Oh, we don't like, it might upset you too, and
Yeah.
that's not good for you or the baby." That's one of the codes, right? That it's
Yeah.
not okay to have your, emotions, with or around your children, and so I really like to debunk that one, but yeah, like, things like that. I mean, they used to put women as they were trying to figure out this whole, um, you know, when they bringing women into hospitals and trying to figure out pain relief, they're they're chaining women to beds. They're knocking them out so they don't even know what happened. Like they're putting them in straitjackets. Like it's like, oh, it's horrifying. And they're going to
Yeah.
look back and look at what we're doing and say similar things, right? We like to think it's evolving. That's a whole other podcast, Carol, for me to get
Right.
for me
No,
to get
I'm with
into.
you. Yeah. Yeah.
The evolution of birth has not evolved in a positive way, for the most part, but story for another
I
podcast.
I do wanna talk about it though.
Okay,
A little bit, a little bit.
sure.
But before I do that, I wanna tell you a story. When I was pregnant with my 3rd child, I worked in an oil refinery. I was a chemical engineer before I was a minister, and I worked in an oil refinery, and I had a
Mm,
a very responsible position for all these different multiple, units that were hydrofining refining oil, and I was called out in the middle of the night. I was, like, 6 or 8 weeks pregnant, and one of my units was on fire. I mean,
oh
like,
my
on
gosh.
fire, and I
Yeah.
remember just being, "Oh my gosh, I'm pregnant. I need to I need to not get too excited about this. I need to make sure that the baby doesn't feel what I'm feeling now." I hadn't it hadn't occurred to me that that was, like, a program that I was running, like, it should
Mhm.
have been fine no matter
Mhm.
what, but I didn't wanna lose the baby, you know?
No, no, we can't, um, and there's it's just we get so extreme in one way, one end
Yeah,
or the other, then we think that there's not a middle ground or a safe place and way to have your emotions
yeah,
and responsible ways to have your emotions. And because, infants and in utero, they're so sensitive. Like they haven't been decent. They're just this bundle of nerves. They're going to pick up on, you can't hide it from them
yeah, yeah,
anyway. Then they're going
yeah.
to, then
Right,
it's
right.
more confusing. The reason I really always advocate for, you know, emotional facility is it just gets so confusing for kids when they can feel upset and they know that it's in the atmosphere of the family, but everybody's acting like, no, everything's fine. There's no problem. So they don't understand, then they feel a little crazy themselves when it's, just things aren't, there's so many appropriate ways we can share and have truth and emotions within a family atmosphere that's authentic so that they can then see that, yeah, it's okay to have my feelings and it's a natural part of being a human, right? We
Yeah.
are. I love, I don't know if you've ever read any of Jill Bolte Taylor's work.
Mm.
She wrote, well, she has a kind of launched with Stroke of Insight and a big TED talk called Stroke of Insight because she was a Harvard neuroanatomist that went through she had something wrong with her brain that she didn't know. It was genetic. So basically, in her 30s, the whole left side of her brain shut down, but slowly. So she was able to observe
Oh, I know
herself.
her. I
You
do
know
know
her,
her.
right? Yeah,
Yes,
yeah,
I didn't know her name, but I read that
yeah,
book.
yeah. And then Whole
Crazy.
Brain Living, if you read the second one, I love it so, so much because it brings the whole brain stuff into, I don't know, spirit. But all that to say, I love when she says that we're emotional beings who think, that think versus our culture where it's like thinking, thinking, thinking. Oh, don't have those, like emotions are some like thing you're supposed to like regulate, avoid, shut
Yeah,
down.
yeah.
And we can't. It does us so much harm.
Yeah, I mean, that's why we project all sorts of stuff onto people, and we're always
Right.
angry, right? Yeah, because 'cause we're just not really
Totally.
handling our emotions. Okay, so we have, I'm gonna put the childbirthing thing to the side, and hopefully we'll get to it.
Okay.
If not, we'll do another one on that,
Yes.
because I have so many thoughts on that. It's
Mhm.
just but I wanna stay with the mother code.
Sure.
Um, the so you've mentioned a few of the mother codes. I know one of them had to do with pregnancy, and it had to do with pregnancy is hard,
Mm.
pregnancy's it's painful and it's enduring and something like that, and it's like, I noticed that with a lot of people, oh my gosh, it's like, is it? I mean, I had a lot of challenges in 2 of my pregnancies, and I had morning sickness with the other, but I thought overall it was really cool,
I
and
did too. Yeah.
really
Well, it
cool.
is it is another one of those wired in beliefs that gets perpetuated, right? When I got pregnant, found out my daughter was going to be born in August, the predominant thing was like, "Oh my god, you're going to be so hot." It's
Yeah,
just
yeah,
that's going to be terrible, right? Like and everybody loves to like kind of throw at you all the terrible things about being pregnant. And there are uncomfortable things. I was lucky I didn't have a, a real challenging pregnancy. So I'm not saying there aren't huge challenges. We just want to at least soften the edges of turning it into this event we're just supposed to get through and get over it and not see and be present with it and see what, we can learn about it. See it as a part of our journey and the adventure of something that's, you know, miraculous. I mean, it's really incredible. And we'll lose sight of all the positive aspects of it when we focus on the negative. And, if in the least we can pull ourselves back from that because pregnancy isn't a problem. It's not a medical emergency. It it
it's not
kinda
a
gets into
medical
the
thing.
birthing. It's
It's not a
because I
medical
also
thing.
say right after I say pregnancy is a problem, is a myth, I also then say birth is not a medical event, so we'll get it in
Yeah,
there, right? Until it is. But
yeah.
we've just turned it all into an emergency and something that we need so much external help with, and it just becomes this time where we get disempowered, and that's the upsetting part for me is how much women are disempowered in these really pivotal, transformative times and kind of fed this belief like, we don't know what we're doing, we're weak, we need all this outside. And unfortunately, in our current culture, male help, they're somehow have become experts and they're going to help us, right? Um, doesn't take away that there are some great male doctors, OBGYNs. But for the most part, it's a process. It's not a, so if I were to sum, it's really hard in masculine thinking, and this is men or women, just that
Mhm.
masculine, thinking of like, oh, well, this should be about doing as many births as we can, as quickly as we can, and make as much money as we can. But that's,
Mhm.
that's where
Mhm.
you really lose me. Versus, no, this is a process that happens differently for everybody. We can naturally let it unfold and monitor, and see when or if we actually need some sort of medical intervention. So I got it in there. Um,
Well, I think coming back to the spiritual, it is an
yes,
amazing, miraculous thing.
I
It is a
know.
divine thing, and why would we ever think if we trusted ourselves and if we had a connection
Mm,
to the divine, to the source energy, why would we think that this is something foreign to us or this is something
yeah.
bad or hard or awful? There is the story. There is a story of, you know, Adam and Eve getting kicked out of the
Mhm.
garden and then, oh, woe for Eve, bad Eve, you did a bad thing. Now you have to suffer with childbirth. That is that's a big code.
Tell me how that's wired into us
Yeah.
so profoundly. Cheryl, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off if you wanted to say more
No, go
about
ahead, go
just
ahead.
your come from in that. But um, yeah, that's where I think we all just need to be curious, right? Like, isn't it curious that like that was the punishment that God gave Adam and Eve for her wanting, to share in the wisdom of the universe, which, I believe we all have in us anyway, but her curiosity, like if there aren't just so many messages about, that are anti-feminine, anti-empowerment for women, and oh, by the way, women were the downfall of everything, right? So
Right, right,
um,
right.
we have to kind of just at least be curious about that, right? I'm like, what
Yeah,
is does
yeah.
that really does that even make sense? Right?
I mean, the story could be written another way, like
Yeah.
Eve, this being came out of her body. Oh my gosh, look at how amazing she is. How could that possibly happen? Why isn't the story
Right.
that?
Right.
Wow, look what she can do. I had no
Exactly.
idea.
Oh, well, and you just hit it, and I almost like tear up when you say that, Carol, because that's what I want to reawaken in women, because that is what it is. That is, and you know, I'm not saying that everyone can experience a pain-free birth, but that pain has gotten so um I'm gonna just I like to think of a
It's
better word, but
overly
demonized.
exaggerated.
It's
Yes, yes.
exaggerated. It's, put in such a it's equated. I read something once where this doctor was equating birth pain with dental pain. Like, well, wouldn't you like want Novocaine to do a cavity? And, why is that any different? Like, well, clearly you've never given birth, right?
You have no idea what you're talking about.
Because that's a pain of creation. And we talked about
Yeah,
that earlier, right? Like when we
yeah.
create, like that's a happy place. But I don't know about you, but the things I've created, there have been times it's hard. It's
It's
painful.
always hard. It's always
It's
hard. Nothing really amazing is created without something that's hard.
yes.
Pain and suffering is part of it. Also joy and work and
Mhm.
fortitude and strength and all sorts of other divine gifts all go together to birth anything, whether it's a child, a new business, a project, a
Yeah.
Christmas display, all
Exactly.
of
Oh,
it.
it's like so true. Oh my gosh, that's so
Yeah,
true.
so we demonize pain, we demonize, anything that's difficult, like in everything should be easy.
Mhm.
No, life's never easy. We don't grow with ease. We grow and we give birth with a little struggle.
Yeah.
And the other miraculous thing about it is it's very handleable. It's
Mhm.
not overwhelming. So,
Mhm.
I think it's an amazing, amazing, amazing mechanism that the universe has created for
Mm. For,
all women. Yeah.
thousands, just like, well, yeah, we could totally get into that. But Yeah, and I so much, the thing that fuels me to want to get that message out there is uh, the subtle to just completely overt, and it should be obvious, but it is the sea we swim in disempowerment of ourselves that
Yeah.
like such a pivotal point to say like, well, if I can't do birth without assistance, if I don't really know what I'm doing, if it's just so painful that I need all sorts of intervention to handle it, what about the rest of life? Like, if I can't do that thing, whereas, and there's studies on it now, Carol, like that, when a woman is empowered in childbirth and given agency and, has a say and knows she has choices and is listened to, in the process, that the self-efficacy that's needed in new motherhood, which is also hard, and full of all sorts of things, then, she's building that. It's I kind of think of it like the butterfly coming out of a chrysalis, right? If we help it too much as it's
Yeah.
doing, that whole like process that it has to go through and struggle to get out, that's building its wings so it can fly.
Yeah.
Um, so, without, I mean, I say things in the book about, you know, a, a male dominated culture that, well, what it's in their favor to keep us docile and not thinking, we have that much power because we know what we can do when we're in touch with it. And it's pretty awesome.
Yeah, and the patriarchy is also not in the favor of men. I mean,
I know.
they're playing a role that isn't even their divine design, you
I
know?
know.
Their divine design is to have an open heart and be in
Yeah.
service to the feminine, and th
Here,
they're
here.
doing something else, so they're way off, and then we're
Mhm.
playing along with that, and we're way off, and so, these forces will be
Mhm.
reconciled.
Mhm.
We will come back to some kind of balance. I want to take a moment. I want to take
Sure.
a moment in the middle of this
Yeah.
to just kind of point out that we know that not every woman is a biological mother, and I think it's
Right.
important. I
Yes.
remember when I was a minister, the hardest sermon I ever had to give when I was a minister of a church was
Mm.
Mother's Day. Mother's Day was always the hardest because so many people have ideas of mothering, mothers, bad mother, abusive mother, neglectful mother,
Mhm.
good mother, but I'm not good enough mother. And I wish I could be a mother, but I never could be a mother. All those people are coming to church on that Sunday. And you had to create space for all of them because
Mhm.
we all have a unique experience and we all have regrets and we all have desires that weren't fulfilled and all of that.
Sure.
And as we said a while ago, you said we are all mothers. We're all
Mm.
mothers, whether we give birth to a biological child or not.
Yep.
Sometimes we're mothers of nieces and nephews. Sometimes we're mothers of
Mhm.
animals, sometimes we're mothers of our business. But it's important to know that we all have this, that we all have this birthing and nurturing as part of our constitution, and even men. So I
Yes.
just wanted to invite all those
Thank
people
you.
into our conversation.
I so appreciate it. And usually I try and kind of get that in early on, to be inclusive in it. And it ended up being such a big thing that came out in my doctoral work with women who didn't have children yet, but were in various phases of whether they were going to or not. And when I shared that, because I had heard that and it had really struck me that we all mother, that, all women, but, I will say that it's really all people, but w- we conceive, create, and give birth to relationships, ideas, pets, careers, yes, children if we choose that. And we have anywhere we put our care and creative, nourishing, cyclical energy into, we're mothering, but that the most important person we need to mother is ourselves. And that I try and get in everywhere I can, as you know, from
Yeah, let's
from
talk
that
about
mother
that.
code.
Let's talk about that. How do we mother ourselves? What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, and well, so much of the conversation we've been having, Carol, is I think that like the deeper mothering, right? Is this exploration? Is listening to your intuition, and following that. And if that's something that's really difficult or you don't even know what that means or is, to learn about it so you can tune into yourself and tune into what your needs are. Because so many of us are just, we didn't know we could have them. So we've just cut ourselves off from our needs. So I think some of the deepest self mothering we could do is get back in touch with, what are our deeper desires? What is it like to go back inside and listen and tune in and then look outside to like, oh, what do other people say about it? Okay, now I'll bring that information in. But ultimately, I'm the creator of my life, my universe, my world. To me, that's, but I also like to say it's everything from self-mothering is, being present in the moment at a beautiful sunset or a flower on the side of the road, to the kind of deepest emotional healing work that we can do. But I start with women, just acknowledging and recognizing where are and have they not been mothering themselves, right? And really raise the awareness to know that we have choice and everybody benefits, right? So if you're not quite ready to say like, okay, that just sounds so selfish. I can't, that's just not right. Like it's too selfish, blah, blah, blah. You can start by tricking your brain to say, no, guess what? Like it's better for everyone. It's the best thing you can do for your children or your relationship is to take care of yourself and have a strong core sense of self.
Yeah, there's nothing wrong with being selfish. That is a code also
Hmm.
that selfishness. I used to do a talk on radical selfishness
Oh, I love it.
because it has to do with caring for yourself first. Everyone knows the metaphor of being on a plane and you give yourself the oxygen before you can give it to your child. Everybody
Mhm.
knows that. So there's nothing new about that, but it is true. It is true. And I think it's okay to nurture yourself without even thinking, I'm nurturing myself so that my family will
Of
benefit.
course, I know.
You know?
It's like, that's just a step that we might need to take, and then you're gonna get to the, like, yeah, I do it because it gives me pleasure, and that's reason enough, right?
Well, yeah,
That
and there were so many breaks and belongings that we've had all along the way of growing up.
mm,
So many. So you can always go inside and find that child that was
mm,
lonely or sad or dispossessed in some
here,
way
here.
and mother her or mother him and give them the care and that they need. So that's another way I think you can self-mother. And we are so disconnected from our needs, like you said, and our feelings. There are times when I'm, like, on a coaching call and then I'm going to pray with them. I'm like, "What are your
Mm,
feelings? What are your feelings?" People have a hard time naming their feeling. They say,
yeah.
"Well, I think that." "No, no, that's not a feeling." I wish that my husband would, "No, that's not a feeling," you know? We really have to get in tune with that, really.
So true. Oh my gosh, all of that. I love it.
Okay, so we should talk about, uh, do you do you wanna talk about rewriting the mother code, or do you wanna get into the 5 cosmic codes that you
Well,
may.
I think we've covered, I mean, just to suffice to say, like, once you've raised your awareness and you see all these codes and you're identified and you're seeing what ones are particularly yours, then you do have the opportunity to write your code. And that then flows from your deeper desires, your values. What do you want to hold as the template, the roadmap for your mothering journey, and you could think of it kind of like a vision statement for yourself, right? Like this is rather than have out there tell me if I'm a good mother, which you'll never, never meet and never understand. Oh, I can name that for myself, and it's going to be a much broader and it's what's going to nourish and make me happy. Really,
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah. Well, before we get into anything else, something else just popped into my mind. Are your girls mothers yet?
No, I have one
Okay,
married daughter, and they
okay,
would like to have children, but they haven't gone down that
okay.
path yet.
Oh, I'm just curious because, uh, I I think it's really important to have your own mother code. I think that what I'm seeing in the generation of mothers now is I'm seeing them kind of disconnecting from their mothers and their grandmothers and not really even relying on them for any input whatsoever, but that there's these experts and books and doctors and stuff over here. And I know that we don't necessarily want to inherit our mothers and
Right.
grandmothers code, but there's also some wisdom there that if we
Yeah,
cut it off, we're missing something.
I know. And I like to encourage the pathway of, doing as much healing work, doing as much mother-owned work as you can, but before you launch into your own motherhood so that you can see that person more clearly. You'll have a sense of, you know, uh, some healing, some awareness of, uh, I don't know, maybe forgiveness, whatever, you need in that to navigate. And, on the farthest end of the spectrum, there's probably some people who shouldn't be in touch with their mothers,
Exactly.
right? Like
Takes discernment.
it takes discernment and, they're protect it's in a very protective way, but I think it sometimes happens a little too loosely and mindlessly. But the work that can be done to be able to include them so that you can see, the positive and bring out the positive in that relationship and share that is, something I'd like us to have, right?
Well, I think one of the reasons we're kind of in this medical paradigm is because we cut off our ancestors
I
and their
know.
experience,
So
completely cut it
true.
off. And I'm sure there was a juncture where it was like, oh, well, you had your baby, walking around in the field, great, great, great grandma, but I'm going to a hospital and I'm doing it this way. And, she has some wisdom for
Oh
us.
yeah.
She
Yeah.
has some
Here,
wisdom
here.
that we cut off.
Yep. Yeah, no, exactly. We don't wanna lose that. So, that's kind of that personal responsibility we need to take so that we're not leaving behind the good stuff, right?
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
and we
Yeah.
can sort
There's
it.
evolution is always that. You've got to assess where you are, discern what was good,
Mhm.
integrate that into your present and go forward. But you don't just have to cut it all off. There's some discernment and some processing of what our ancestors because we're here because of them. I mean,
Mhm.
that doesn't mean they did everything right, but thank God for them.
Yeah, here,
Yeah.
here.
Okay, so d- do you want to talk about some of the cosmic codes? I think they're kind of cool.
Yeah, no, I'd love to, like, have us, bring those out into the conversation and obviously um, because I in the book, I talk about childhood codes, cultural codes, and those are the wiring that we talked about, right? And those are things that were passed on to us. We don't we deal with them the way we best do for our survival. Once we've unraveled those, and that then we open the door to the possibility of like what's on the other side of those walls we've built up with those codes, which I've named the cosmic codes, and those those are the universal truths, the universal laws of spirituality, if you want to put it in that framework of truth, of higher wisdom, higher power. I felt like, I wanted to name some and ones that I felt like kind of came through me, into the book just to, but certainly never want to say like they're limited to this or this is, but
Right,
let's
right.
like get a taste
Yeah.
of what they are. Because when we can live in this space, we can still have our individual experience, but feel connected to the greater whole. And that's one of the cosmic codes. We're going connected. We're not alone. We're connected, to the universe. And I think that is both daunting and kind of like, whoa, what, or but we are, right? That's where the stardust comes in. And we are made from stardust. There's just, this isn't a woo woo kind of thing. This is science letting us know, that we are formed, um, from the stars, right?
Mhm.
And we've all it's a cycle, right? Birth, death. So when we can get in contact with something like that, another code, well, one of the codes that we've just spoke of, but I put it as a cosmic code is that we all mother, that we and that one I've already shared, but that to me, brings the bigness, the expansiveness of the definition, than just like, nope, woman, you're here on this earth to gestate a child, and that's your purpose, and that's the only reason you're here. It's like, oh no, no, that's just one beautiful aspect. Another one is pain is a portal. So pain
Mhm.
can bring us to transcendence, as we talked about with childbirth. Like that is, you know, uh, I believe it's a space of creation,
It
that's
is.
beautiful and part of it. And when we can see it in that bigger, broader sense, then we're not limiting ourselves, shutting ourselves down, or erasing the potential experience to connect with the divine, um, when we open ourselves up to that. And that we're vessels of love, like love, love, love everywhere. I mean, just can't say enough about, cosmic love and what that means to be in connection with that. And then the fifth one is that mothering yourself is a sacred experience. And to take it out of like, oh gosh, you know, I, I, I need to do these things, into like, no, this is another way to like, to deeply connect with myself so I can connect to higher power or spirit, and uh, really tune in and nurture myself is, yeah, I believe, one of the most sacred experiences we can have.
Well, everything that you're saying is integrating the spiritual back into the materiality of life, and mothering and birth and all of that we talked about has been medicalized. So
Mhm.
once it's medicalized, it becomes this procedure. It
Yeah.
becomes a thing that you're a cog and now in a machine.
Yeah.
And to bring spirituality, to bring God, the divine spirit into this process of conceiving and nurturing in the womb and giving birth and then nurturing the child or whatever it is that your creative endeavor is, we've taken a big step back evolutionarily by cutting the spiritual off. And it seems like what you're trying to do is bring that
Bring it
back.
back in. Yeah.
Bring it back. And
100%.
wow, what would it all look like then? Rather than going to the doctor, you'd be going to a birthing experience or
Yeah,
whatever, and we're all gonna be talking about how we've been touched by the divine,
exactly.
and we're
It's
how we're carrying this divine being, and
oh,
how, and how we're so excited to bring this forth into the world, and we're so willing to accept whatever pain it might take because it's the divine design,
yeah.
and it's beautiful, and I am
That's
equipped,
so
and
true.
I'm never alone.
Here, here.
Wow.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think to let ourselves imagine that, because we've been so cut off from it, I think some of then the next work is like, wow, what would the world look like if we did that? I mean, it's, you know, the forces that play now, why they're working so hard to not get us back in touch with, is because it will upend a lot of current systems and paradigms. But I believe for the greater good. I believe you know, we'll advance further and more beautifully and more ethically and everything if we start, you know, shifting
Yeah,
away.
well, all those systems are coming down.
Yeah,
We may not live to see it, but they're all coming down. Or they're going to disintegrate or dissipate or
for
evaporate or
sure.
something because it's not representative of the divine. It's not a reflection of it.
Mhm.
It's off. And so we know that we're on the path to restore
Yeah,
divinity and to restore personal power and restore what I would say is the golden rule and all of the things that are written in our original DNA.
mhm.
So, we may not see it, we might see it, I don't know. But the work that you're doing is part of the dismantling of the
It's
codes and the structures and all of that. And, you know, have
what
at
I'm
it. Good for
hoping.
you.
Yeah, thank you. Oh, it's been such a cool, incredible journey, right?
Yeah.
Um, it's one of those like, why am I doing this? How did this happen? And then it's like, don't ask that question. Just,
You said yes.
Yeah, I said yes. Follow
Yeah,
the
yeah, and
call,
I
right?
think we're all being called in our
Mhm.
own way. We're all being called, not just women, like I said before,
No. Oh, no,
men are
no.
way off their natural expression, and I know deep within them, they want out too.
Mm.
It's such a burden, really, and so, I think that some of us are kind of awakening and listening to this rhythm that's out there that's calling us to do what we can do in this time of great creativity and great change.
Here, here.
And it's a very exciting time to be on the planet. So you said yes, I say yes to what I'm called
Yeah.
to do. Everybody out there, whatever you're hearing in your heart, your soul, say yes
Mm.
and join us in this
Here,
wonderful
here.
revolution.
Yes. Oh my
Yeah.
gosh, yes. Oh, Carol,
Um,
thank you. I'm so glad you're doing the work you're doing, right? We're all doing our part, and then it's
we're all doing
possible.
our part. Yeah. And we have to do our part. We can't go, oh gosh, I wish I was like her, or I wish I
Mm-mm.
was more like him. You've really just got to do what you're equipped
Here,
to
here.
do. We all have that. And, back to the whole infant in the womb, each one of those babies has a unique soul that we are responsible for bringing forth into the world
Mm.
and allowing them to express their unique gifts.
Yeah.
And what a privilege that is to bring
Here, here.
more souls who possibly have more awareness than we did or than I did. You're younger than I.
Mhm. Not a ton, but yeah, a little
Yeah.
bit.
So, okay, so where let me look at where the time is. Oh,
Yeah.
yeah. What else would you like to talk about before we close? I wanna make sure that
No,
you
I just
have,
think this is
final
all
words.
we're no, you've I'm just so grateful. You've just brought it the whole thing all around and the final like, yeah, um understand, and I say this in the book, I want every person to have, a personally meaningful experience in their motherhood. I want that for them personally, but to understand that they are contributing to uh, the greater good, and it's going to ripple effect. So whether you consciously want to know that or not, like I want people to know that taking this on for yourself, you don't have to. But I think it's radical and revolutionary. But I really want that for women. I want us to be able to go back and trust ourselves, tune in, so that we can make those choices that come from that deep cosmic place.
And celebrate Eve.
Yes, celebrate Eve. Exactly, celebrate Eve.
Celebrate Eve. Okay, well, we'll have links to whatever you're
Yeah,
up to and the book, and I don't know if you got a retreat on the horizon. Do you
for
have a retreat
sure.
on the horizon?
Yeah, the book, she just came out, just gave birth, so she's top of mind, but then, yes, I'm actually leading 2 retreats this summer in Ireland. I just started leading these will be my first retreats in Ireland, and then in the fall and spring, I'll be leading 2 retreats in Mexico.
Okay. Well,
Yeah,
we'll have links to those or at least your webpage. So
for sure, the
thank you,
webpage,
Gertrude, so much. How fun
yeah,
this was.
beautiful. Thank you, Carol.
Yeah, and thank you everyone for listening. And I now close the Spiritual Forum.